Welcome to the Retiring Real Estate Investor Podcast, where we will discuss how to defer taxes on the sale of your property, earning passive real estate income, and everything you need to know to go from active investor to passive investor. Join us as we interview passive investment sponsors, explore the journey of other retiring real estate investors, and share our due diligence process we perform to select passive investments. Investment advisory services provided by Insight Investment Advisors LLC, a registered investment advisor. This podcast is only intended for clients and interested investors residing in the states in which we are registered to provide investment advisory services or exempt from registration. Please contact us to determine if the firm provides investment advisory services in the state where you reside. All content on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. Material presented is believed to be reliable sources, and no representations are made by our firm as to another party's informational accuracy or completeness. Insight Investment Advisors LLC and its representatives do not provide tax or legal advice, and nothing herein should be construed as such. Always consult with your tax advisor or attorney regarding your specific circumstances. Welcome, everybody, to the Retiring Real Estate Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Bruckman. I'm excited to be joined by Jeffrey Donis of Donis Investment Group. Is that correct, Jeffrey? Am I saying it right? The investment group, Donis Investment Group. I'm getting it right. You're doing this with yourself and your brothers. You've purchased over 1,000 multifamily apartment units. That number blew me back in my seat. And you're targeting Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. Do you want to give our listeners a bit of an introduction about yourself and your group? And kind of how'd you get here? That's a lot of units.
So yeah, initially got into real estate about 3 years ago. My two brothers, I have a twin brother and an older brother. We got into it together. We were all college students when we first started. So we grew up with a single mother, and growing up, money was scarce. So as soon as we all were pretty much of age and had the ability and the mental capacity to at least start to dream of how we could possibly retire our mom, it became a desire of ours. So eventually, halfway through my freshman year, that was when we really started taking action. Initially, it was just podcasts, YouTube videos, and the first thing that we came across was wholesaling single family. I won't go into too much details in regards to that first year, but what we pretty much started with was all wholesaling single family properties. We did some creative finance deals as well. We were doing some owner financing and some subject to deals. I think we ended up doing one fix and flip. After that first year, we had continued our education, which we're still doing today, and in regards to podcasts and YouTube and books. And we came across apartment syndication from one of the biggest YouTube gurus, Grant Cardone. So he kept talking about commercial real estate and how he wished he had started sooner. A lot of other podcasts we were listening to were pretty much had the same theme. A lot of the people were wishing they had started sooner and gone larger, faster for various reasons. And we sort of had that seed planted that year. It took us a little bit to actually start taking action and take the leap of faith, but eventually we did. So we transitioned from single family acquisitions to trying to take down our first apartment complex. And that always starts for us with education. So we read the Best Ever Apartment Syndication book by Joe Fairless, which allowed us to learn about how to get started. And the first step was for us to get a mentor. So we eventually joined a mastermind group. And after joining that, that's really what opened the gates to the deal flow and partnerships. And I'll stop there. But there was a lot of things that came after that and before that. But in like a general sense, that's really how we ended up here.
So big missions here that you're looking to accomplish, right? Like you kind of see where you're coming from, and you guys the three of you put a pretty big goal on the board. We're going to retire my mom. So it's interesting what happens when you start putting big goals on the board. You kind of started, once you have that, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, Jeffrey, but you kind of probably had that mindset every day of like, all right, well, how do I get there? And the searching. Yeah. When was that day that the three of you sat down and said, yes, it's real estate? That was the thing you're going to go after. What was so appealing to you about searching some of those options? Were there other options that you guys were looking at too?
It's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. So initially we read Rich Dad Poor Dad. That was the first book that my older brother told me to read. And then I read Think and Grow Rich. And then I started listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast. So in Rich Dad Poor Dad, obviously, it talks about a lot of things. in regards to financial literacy, but it also talks about real estate and how majority of the millionaires in the country, United States, and in the world become millionaires through real estate. So that was really what attracted us to getting into real estate. And then we had heard about wholesaling. That was just on a YouTube video that my brother was watching one day called The Breakfast Club. It's like a
Mhm.
sitcom show on YouTube where they'll bring on different guests that do various different things. A lot of entrepreneurs, and one of the guests was operating and running a wholesale company. So that was our first, I guess, experience with anything in regards to real estate outside of being an agent, which at the time that's all we thought real estate was really being an agent, getting a license, things like that. I really
Yeah.
didn't know you could do anything like wholesaling or eventually buying apartments, things like that. I just had never even been exposed to it at all. So that was
Mhm.
why we got into real estate first, was really because that was all we were exposed to. And for wholesaling in particular, you don't really need a lot of money to get started, and we had no experience, and that's what attracted us to that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's funny. Now, I'm sort of curious, did each of you end up finishing college, or did the real estate become too all encompassing that you're like, well, what am I how should I spend my next week? Is it really in class, or is it probably out making deals? Did you guys eventually finish, or did you
Mhm.
decide at that point, look, I
Great
found out what I
question.
wanted to do, it's time to go?
Exactly. Yeah. So I was like halfway through my freshman year, as I mentioned, when I got started.
Hmm.
And the way that we would do it was I would cold call for 2 hours after class and then in between my studying and then dinner. And my other brothers would do the same thing. So one brother would do 2 hours, I would do 2 hours, the next would do two, pretty much from four, or let's say my brother would do it in the morning, whenever we could, right? So we were just having a little bit of time each day. And then when COVID hit, we were all sent home because you weren't allowed to stay in
Nice.
your dorm rooms
Yeah.
because of the health issues and all of that. So now that we were all back at home quarantining, we had no other distractions, including school. It was online at that point, so we
Hmm.
could get away with spending a few hours versus the majority of the day, and the rest of that time be allocated towards the business. So eventually, we closed on our first deal. That was the summer before going back for my sophomore year,
Hmm.
and I told myself, I'm not going back. I don't want to go back. My mom did not want me to stay. She wanted me to go, but eventually we did our first deal, and it was the biggest deal we ended up doing, and that was sort of a realization for me that I can make money without going a traditional route. And honestly, I was learning a lot more of things that I found that I could actually apply to my life, and also that I enjoyed learning. And I really decided that if I really want to go back, I can one day. But right now, I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm going to conferences, things like that. So I didn't go back. And then eventually, my two brothers ended up leaving as well. My older brother and myself ended up leaving first, and then my twin brother left a year after.
Yeah, that's such an important point. Is that there's a couple of things I want to put in a time capsule for my kids too. Did everyone hear that? He was going to class and then cold calling for 2 hours, and then your brother would do the same. It's I don't know if a lot of students are putting that kind of effort in and thinking about that alongside of their education of staying in school. You still have some time there that's free and an
Yeah,
opportunity to utilize it, and you guys found it and did it. But a really good point too, as well. You can always go back. There's no reason you can't
yeah,
finish that, and then maybe it's something else that you want to really learn about. And the third thing I heard in there that really stuck out to me was you love to learn. So
yes,
this isn't a leave school not to learn. You left school to learn more. You left school to learn more applicable items so that you can use those in a way to reach the goals that you're trying to get to. The learning doesn't really stop, does it?
no, not at all. And if anything, I've learned to love learning again because honestly, school really didn't give me the opportunity, or the things that we were assigned to learn, I really didn't enjoy. But now I'm reading books like Robert Kiyosaki books, Ken McElroy books, Grant Cardone books, all of these other things that teach me skills and other like financial literacy topics, real estate, investing, things like that, that obviously help me with my business, but a lot of other things like my spirituality and habits, things like that, that school never really taught me. I'm not blaming school. I just think if you're someone that has somewhat of a drive to learn and to just try to improve, I think you'll learn a lot outside of school.
Talk about some of that. Is a mentor helped in some of those areas for you that are maybe non-traditional school? Help you kind of think about some of those things?
For sure, I would say majority of my mentors have been in real estate, so that's where they've brought the most value.
Hmm.
but I have mentors who, and I love to say that mentors don't necessarily have to be someone that you know personally. I love authors that I've never met, and there's a lot of authors like Napoleon Hill, who isn't alive anymore, but I treat him as a mentor.
Hmm.
So all the content and knowledge that he has, that he was able to document through the books that he's written, I still can learn a lot of valuable lessons from those. So that's another opportunity for me to have another mentor in my life. And at the same time, there's different mentors for different things that I've slowly over time been able to find. For now, for example, I've come a lot more into my faith. So
Hmm.
I have people that I go to church with who I sit down and talk about my spirituality. I have a mentor for my real estate that I'm in a mastermind group, and he's doing exactly what I'm doing in the apartment syndication space. Has been doing it for over 25 years. He's actually a partner on all of our apartment deals with us, and he's like a life coach more so than just a real estate investor that we would invest with, because he's a lot older than us, and I see him as a really like someone I can look up to.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. It's so critical. And one of the questions you wanted me to ask you about was the importance of leveraging a team. And I think you got into a
Yeah.
little bit of it there. Like this is critical. it's not a, what's the old phrase? You can go it alone, but you can go a lot faster. You bring some other folks with you. You probably know this
hmm
phrase better than I do, but talk to us about that a little bit, about that power of a team, as you alluded to a little bit there with the mentors helping you.
Yeah, for sure. So I like to say, for me, for my specific life and journey, mentors played various different roles and brought numerous different ways of value. In regards to my apartment syndication journey, having a team who has more experience than me, primarily me being younger, newer, a lot of people would see that as a limiting belief, and it has been inhibiting in a lot of ways
Hmm.
and restrictive. But also, it brings a lot of opportunities outside of just real estate, and that therefore I think there's more value and benefits than negatives. But the small amount of negatives that I do have, a lot of those I can squash with having a very experienced sponsorship team around me. For
Hmm.
instance, when it comes to raising money, a lot of investors will look at me and think, you're too young to, or have no experience, right? Because I haven't been in the business long enough to have gone full cycle on certain deals. So they'll look at me and say, okay, well, why would I invest with you? The way that I overcame that was by partnering with someone who's gone full cycle on numerous number of deals and has been
Hmm.
in the industry for over almost 30 years and has a great reputation, has over a billion assets under management. And they're not only just someone that I can talk to and partner with, but they're actually like able to get on the phone with the investor if I need it. So it's very different than having someone from a distance versus someone who's actually in your network, who you can consider a friend. So that's how I've been able to overcome raising money. A lot of people are willing to invest with us, not only because of our relationship, but on top of it, our team is very experienced. Now, when it comes to brokers, the same thing. They'll look at us and think you're young and how can you afford it or whatever. But at the end of the day, one, like there's certain things you can do, but really, if they don't even kind of want to look through you, you can leverage your partnerships and your team to be able to win a deal. And then when it comes to building a team outside of just your partners, who are your property managers? Who are your insurance brokers? Who's the legal team you'll be working with? A lot of these people aren't always easy to find, and you could
Hmm.
probably find them eventually, but how do you know they're actually good people to work with, right? It's kind of like the book Who Not How, and sort of just tapping into one person who's the influencer in the room. And if you can tap into one person who has an very, very great big network with awesome people, chances are it'll make it a lot easier if I just meet one person who has all that versus me trying to create that myself. So instead of trying to do that myself, we just connected with one individual who pretty much brought all the things I just mentioned with just one connection.
Isn't it funny how, and I've had this experience as well, isn't it funny how you meet that one person and then all you really brought to that table was a curiosity, an energy, a drive, showed them some intelligence, and people will open the world for you into what they've
Yeah,
learned and give you that accelerator. Have you found this as well?
100%. And
Hmm.
now, to be transparent, I did like pay to get into this mastermind group, so it wasn't like But I have a lot of people who I didn't pay. So
Yeah.
for this particular
But
example,
I could
yes,
pay to
yeah,
I could pay to get into that and I could sit in the corner though, right?
that's true. No, that's true, and I think a lot of people do actually do that, right? They just don't take a lot of action. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like with everything in life. You have to take a lot of action,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of people they'll get intimidated, especially when you're younger or just new. A lot of people do want to help because it's
Hmm.
obvious, but people forget everyone was. at one point in your shoes or close to where you are. So a lot of people in this space in particular are very willing to give.
Yeah, I've found that too. As we've started in this space, from that perspective, the generosity of folks is through the roof, and you just want to kind of
Yeah.
hand it back too. To your point earlier about being younger, like parallel story on our end. Prior to this, when I was younger, we started a healthcare consulting company, and we'd walk in
Cool.
and really walk CFOs through, how to make more money for their hospital, make sure they're collecting more, and same looks, right? Like, I don't know if I trust you guys to do that. Don't worry, we all grow beards and we all did everything we could to try and look older, right? To kind of
Yeah.
gain some credit, or to beat that stigma, because we felt like our knowledge would gain that credibility in what we're bringing if folks would listen, right? So we were
Yeah.
trying to beat back. That reminded me of trying to beat that stigma back too, in a big way.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, you've mentioned your faith a couple times, and I think this is great because, personally, was always sort of maybe in hindsight a missing piece. So how is
Mm,
that? How big of a role, or how is faith playing a big role in what you're able to achieve as well?
100%. So it's something that I've grown into, I'd say, over the last year. It's played the biggest role that it has previously in my life. And I'm still learning a lot, so I won't sit here and act like I'm the most well versed, but they're
Yeah,
just, you know
me
what I mean,
neither.
right? Like that. Yeah, yeah. So like, I like to be someone. I'm very, very faithful now in regards to a lot of different things. For example, rather than me thinking I have to be the one in control of everything, I just try to work at my best, work my hardest, put the most effort into the things that I'm think that bring the most, I guess, what feels right and things that I think will lead me to where I want to go. But at the end of the day, there's a higher power, and for me, that's God, that's in control. So as long as I lean into that, then I see myself a lot less stressed. And at the end of the day, I want to, like, there's a lot of things that have changed in my life for the benefit and the positive of other people and the people in my network, just through the love that I feel through God and through other people. And when I've been doing that, my work, like, I show up better. I think for my investors, for my partners, things like that. But really, man, if I'm going to be transparent, like, I'm so new to it that it's hard for me to put words in regards to like exactly what it's done. I just say it's improved the way that I wake up, my thoughts, temptations, all that stuff, and we can get into it. But like all the negatives have slowly gone away, and it just makes more sense. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's like hard to describe a lot of times, but something I'm new to and looking to grow into more as I grow as a faithful follower.
Yeah, I play on the amateur level there as well, and same kind of thing where you can sort of offload some of this stress and worry somewhere
Yeah,
else and realize you don't have to, and that feels pretty good. And then
100%.
some of my mentors from that perspective would say something like, "Oh, you have this problem? Well, have you bothered to pray about it?" Oh, no, I
Mm,
forgot again. Good point. Thank you. Yeah, I should probably consult that aspect of my life first before anything else. So always good points there. I was curious. How is it working
yeah.
with your brothers? That has to be rewarding, maybe a little challenging once in a while, but it has to
Yeah,
be very fun, right?
yeah, no, I love it. They're like my best. They are my best friends outside of like just work, and it's awesome when you have people that you not only can trust because we grew up together, and we also have we're like minded. We have the same values. We have the same upbringing, obviously. So when it comes to work ethic and things like that, and I've had friends who've had partners and partnerships that didn't
Mhm.
work out because of things like work ethic and different sorts of values when it comes to how you spend money or how you see money. Things that really just at the core of what other people believe. My brothers and I, we share that. Now it is good because we are a lot different in certain areas in regards to our personalities. So we do bring different perspectives, and we do fight. I'll be honest, but cool thing about it is like I don't know if you have siblings, Brandon, but in regards
I
to
don't actually.
we don't. Oh, you don't. Well, for us, and I know a lot of those siblings, they do hold grudges, but we don't. Like we'll fight, and 5 minutes later, it's done. And it could be about business or just about we live together as well. So it could be about whether or not we didn't wash the dishes, something like dumb like that, you know. So like things like that don't transfer over into the business or vice versa. So we get over it, and really, I think I enjoy spending time with them, and I see them putting so much time and effort into their development, into their growth, into their faith. things like that I value. So I just enjoy spending time with people like that, and fortunately, they're my brothers, so I got blessed in that way.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's an amazing blessing. Yeah, and we do have three children, so we watch this. My wife and I are, not to go too personal here, but we're doing it, so who cares? My
Yeah.
wife and I are both children, so we neither of us
Okay.
have
Cool.
siblings, but we have three kids. So we don't we're learning like these dynamics between
Yeah.
each sibling and how they interact. Like we've never experienced it, so we don't really know.
Yeah.
People are like, "Oh, did you miss that?" It's like, well, maybe I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't tell you because I didn't experience it. So I don't know if I missed it or not. But it's interesting for us to watch those dynamics. So I hope
For sure.
our three kids kind of turn out the same way that you and your brothers are, where you're able to not hold the grudge, have that argument, but still be very tight. Like this is excellent. So
For sure.
we got to talk about markets and what kind of you guys see going on a little bit.
Yeah.
In our view, things have seismically changed with interest rates. We are seeing some different things in multifamily. Are you guys still seeing the same opportunities as before? Is this game more difficult? How do you approach sort of on a deal by deal basis now, given the shift in let's say the environment?
For sure. So, in regards to markets and interest rates, this is like an interesting topic. So, like I think a few months ago, in regards to how we were underwriting our deals, we've used a lot of bridge debt in the past for our deals of value add. So typically bridge loans, we do buy
Mm-hmm.
rate caps. In regards to those, it typically makes more sense to go the bridge loan path for our opportunities
Mm-hmm.
in regards to our investment philosophy. But lately, we've been looking at using more of a long term, a fixed rate kind of debt. But I don't know if you subscribe to different like interest rates and different rate cap sellers and people like that sell those types of insurance policies.
Mm-hmm.
There's different newsletters that go out and they talk about the best time to lock in your rate, and they're saying right now isn't the best time to do that because typically this is when interest rates will, for whatever reason in the past, historically speaking, interest rates come down soon after the last Fed rate hikes, which seems like statistically speaking that's about to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that's why we're not necessarily we are underwriting our deals with permanent agency debt. If you can fix it and
Okay.
it cash flows, then I don't see why you wouldn't do that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
there's typically more savings that you can have if you do keep it adjustable depending on where you are in this cycle of
Mm-hmm.
Fed rate hikes. So that's what we're trying to determine right now. We are using long-term debt in our underwriting, but it's just like a different conversation that we're having internally. In regards to deal flow, it has picked up over the last few weeks. I'd say over the last 2 weeks, it picked up tremendously in our markets. We're still about 10 to 15% below listing price, but brokers are telling us that if we're able to submit an offer right now, sellers are still looking for buyers who, this is obviously all the time, but they're really, really more keen on finding a buyer that they're confident can close. So the way that we approach it is going after the right, for us, the price that we know we can close at, but really trying to be aggressive on terms. For us, that looks like putting more earnest money that's non-refundable down. Um, you know, that's primarily what we're looking at is just having some type of non-refundable earnest money, and then a certain percentage going hard after due diligence, things like that. And we are seeing deal flow come up, and we have a few deals we're looking at now that we're pretty confident we'll be able to at least get close on price or be competitive in regards to the eyes of the seller. So we're hopeful that we'll get another deal done sometime soon.
Does it feel like sellers have come to grips with the new sort of regime we live in? Like you're not going to see the same price that you saw valuation you saw 6 to 8 months ago. Like that ship has sailed. Are sellers kind of getting that through their heads? Like, okay, I guess we're not going back there. Better proceed with what we wanted to do anyways, which was sell at these current levels. It sounds like folks are getting more comfortable with that on the selling side. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say some. Yeah, I'd say like as always, there's always certain people that do
Mm-hmm.
because they bought maybe like 6 or 5 years ago, and they're going to do well regardless. And even if they sell right now, they're still going to sell at a profit. Now, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people who want to sell but can't for various
Mm-hmm.
reasons, and there's a lot of people that don't need to sell. And I think if you're in a position where you don't need to sell and you can just survive, and whether you're not cash flowing and you can just infuse your own cash or just remain at a net positive of anything or just break even, but just wait it out. I think if you can do that, a lot of people are doing that. which is why there's a lot less activity going on in commercial real estate currently. But there's a lot of people that do need to sell, and there's a lot of people who are still willing to sell. So that's why we are seeing deal flow pick up. As I'm sure you've seen, like a lot of people on their bridge loans are coming due now. So that's something that I do expect to tick up in the set to last, I guess, the last half of 2023. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to scoop up some good opportunities soon.
That's what I wanted to ask you about was some of the bridge that's coming up soon for some folks in these properties. Do you think they
Yeah,
really put themselves? Are they in trouble? I mean, have and by that I mean is the previous underwritten models that those folks had at financing from a year ago versus now, is the increased cost of long-term debt making some of those projects not feasible despite maybe a successful value add to that project? Are these deals that just aren't going to work, and is that what you're hoping to
yeah,
see on the marketplace to take advantage of?
for sure. And I hate to see anyone doing like going through something tough, but I think that's just like
100%.
the nature of it, right? Things are just going to happen, and that's where
Mm-hmm.
opportunity comes for people who are ready to invest and scoop up those opportunities. For us, what I think we'll have, like what I've seen and heard of in the past, is certain operators who were just buying properties at what they could win at whatever price, and they didn't have to do anything to it. A lot of people weren't even doing any renovations or putting any of their capex
Oh,
into the projects, really just sitting on it. And as you saw, rents were going crazy over the last few years,
mm-hmm.
increasing 15, 20% in some markets, 10% in some markets, which wasn't sustainable long term for any long term investor that had that projection. It's not, we just didn't know when it was going to stop, right? So once the
Mm-hmm.
Fed started raising rates, that definitely changed. And a lot of these operators who weren't infusing the money that they had for capex into the projects, or maybe they were, but they still were maybe being very aggressive on their rental assumptions and rental increases, things like that. Now that that's slowed down, and specifically on the refi rates that they were using 3 to 4 years ago, now that you're looking at your underwriting, and let's say you assumed you would be able to refi into a 3 or 4%, obviously that's a lot higher. We're at over 6% now, so closer to
Mm-hmm.
7%, right? So that's not you're not going to be able to refi. A lot of these people with asset prices going down and cap rates expanding, they have no equity, so they can't
Mm-hmm.
refi. You might have to infuse capital, and that's where the opportunity is. Now, I think for hopefully for a majority of these people, they have either enough cash reserves and you can just last. A lot of people are doing capital calls, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. But a lot of people just will end up either having to just sell and break even or at a loss. I've heard a lot of people going to pre foreclosure and just having the bank take it. And that's where a lot of opportunities for investors like us who have have the capital side, have the relationships. You're
Mm-hmm.
able to have that. Really, I think the main thing is having the relationships, because a lot of these brokers will be the ones who
Mm-hmm.
have built relationships with banks, and those banks are the ones getting called back. They don't want to be a real estate investor. They want to
Mm-hmm.
just hold the note. That's what they're doing. That's what a bank does. So
Mm-hmm.
the people that have the best relationships with brokers, I think, will be the ones that first see these opportunities come to market, or just have those opportunities come their way,
Mm-hmm.
versus having to fight it over with like five other investors. And I think that's where the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity is.
Yeah, and I'd add banks to that equation too in terms of relationships. If you can be connected there as
Yeah.
well. I just judge, and then you correct me if I'm wrong or add to. I judge there's a lot of folks with proverbial dry powder waiting for the distressed opportunities that it looks more like a deli line where it's pretty backed up
Mm,
in that line for folks waiting for those opportunities. I just don't think you're going to see a wave of them that is going to be readily accessible. It is going to be for the folks that have
mm,
positioned themselves with great relationships, as you mentioned,
yeah.
with a broker or with the bank, to slide in on those opportunities quickly and to do something that you mentioned before, have some confidence you're able to quickly close and give the confidence you're able
Yeah.
to execute that way is going to be a big deal. Are you kind of sizing that up sort of the same way that it's going to be competitive for those
Yeah.
opportunities?
That's a great question, and I ask myself and my brothers a question all the time, because there's a lot of people that say they're not buying right now, and I think there's a difference between being patient, yet you're still reaching out, underwriting deals during the market. You're talking to your insurance broker, your lenders, to
Mm-hmm.
understand what's going on in the equity capital markets, as well as where deal flow is with brokers and things like that, so that when you do get a deal that pencils out, and it's not like people sound an alarm saying, it started. Like, no, we typically look back and say, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no,
from
it's
what
not
I've
going to happen,
learned,
everyone. There will be no warning signal that it's time to buy distressed opportunities. That email will not go out to everyone.
right? Exactly, and
Yeah.
we typically look back and you'll say, okay, that's what happened. And that was what just happened. We had opportunities that hit, and a lot of people may not ever get in. So my understanding is, why ever stop? Just underwrite deals, and most of them won't pencil out. Eventually, one hopefully will. And what I try to do during these times is, I'm even more, I guess, proactive in regards to
Hmm.
reaching out to my investors. And for a lot of people, let's say you're not reaching out to brokers. First, you're not going to get the deal, but also you want to make sure you're talking to investors, because even if you do win a deal, can you close? Right now, it's
Hmm.
hard to get. Certain lenders just aren't lending, specifically in multifamily, with it being so, quote unquote, like hard to forecast what's going to happen with cap rates, as well as with interest rates. A lot of people are scared right now. So it's the operators with the best relationships that will actually get the opportunity, that will be able to close, and that lenders are really looking to work with. So
Hmm.
again, back to my team, a lot of my team members have been in the industry through these downturns and have done well in the downturns. So that's why they have lenders who are willing to work with them, because they've done it
Hmm.
before. So these are things that you could be creating and sort of forming at this point, as well as reaching out to brokers, so that once you do get a relationship with a broker and they start sending you deals and you do submit an offer, you can submit with confidence. And then if you do win it, you don't have to necessarily struggle or, unfortunately, not close just because you weren't being proactive.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, this is the time where additional effort means a lot for you to kind of keep working. So I'd imagine you can go through this underwriting process, say 2 years ago, and you're like, wow, there's a lot of green lights on the page of where you could go pursue
Yeah,
some opportunities. Now there isn't. So just yeah, it means more work, and that doesn't seem to be a
yeah,
problem for you guys whatsoever. To go ahead and dig in and keep building those
100%.
relationships. It will be interesting to say the least about where we go on
Yeah,
on cap rates. I'll be very intrigued to see
I'm excited.
where. Yeah, it's interesting, right?
Yeah, I'm excited too, because I mean, obviously, good times are awesome, but I think through the hard times, and Trump has been famous for saying it, in that he learned more in the hard times than he did in the good times, and I've learned that myself through the short, hard times that I've had. I've learned a lot, and I think it makes our business better for it, and me as a person grow a lot. So I do look forward to it, so that I can see what I can learn from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there will be opportunities present. If you can take advantage of those, I mean, all the better, and all the better for investors. Jeffrey, this has been awesome. Where can people go to learn a little bit more about you, your brothers, your team, what you guys are working on? Where's the best place for that?
Yeah, you can visit our website at www.donisinvestmentgroup.com, and we also have a checklist that any person who's looking to vet a passive investment opportunity, you feel free to use it. It's just that website /checklist. You can find us on all social media platforms at Donis Brothers, and then we have a podcast that you can check out. It's The Real Estate Monopoly.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'll link some of that stuff up in the show notes so people can check it out.
Perfect.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Brandon. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And thank you everyone for listening. Until next time, see you soon.